My name is Thomas Chatterton Williams. I'm an American journalist and author of now 2 books in French, Une soudaine liberté and Autoportrait en noir and blanc. And I'm the son of a black man from the segregated South and a white mother from Southern California, from an evangelical Christian family. I grew up in New Jersey in a mixed household, but firmly believing the American dictum that a single drop of black blood makes a person black because they cannot be white. And I really believed this and never really challenged this notion until I had my first child in Paris, and she essentially looked Swedish, and her birth and her physical presence in my life forced me to grapple with questions of identity and race and what it means to believe that you can be a different race than your child is. I began to no longer believe that my father and my daughter are separate races, and so it sent me into a kind of interrogation of the racial mythology and ideology that I'd subscribed to all of my life. We're never going to be able to transcend racism so long as we believe in the categories of race on which it's premised. In the journey from the first book, in grappling with what it means to be racially authentically black, to the second book, rejecting the racial construct and the white-black binary entirely, I began to move towards what I think is some of the finer thought to come from France, which is the Republican ideal, which is the idea that there is no such thing as race, that we are all citizens and equal, and that we find ways to belong to each other based on universal values. Unfortunately, I think that it's contrarian these days to reject identity categories and to try to find a universal humanism, a transcendent humanism that we all participate in. I think that we've gotten ourselves in a situation where the rhetoric of anti-racism has come in many ways to mirror the rhetoric of racism, which is simply to say that on both the left and the right, we now have a discourse where it is the racial categorization alone which matters and which can't be transcended. And so I try to push against that. And at the moment, that's a contrarian position. So I guess I have to own it. There's no doubt that there's an Americanization of the French discourse on identity and racism and anti-racism. But it's interesting to remember that a lot of the ideas that come from America about identity are French-inflected ideas that came to American college campuses decades ago through Foucault and Derrida and various thinkers. So there's much more of a kind of symbiotic dynamic than I think is acknowledged in today's debate. But there's no doubt that American soft cultural power is very potent, and that the language of social networks is not just overwhelmingly English, but it's overwhelmingly American. And so the language of anti-racism and the language of wokeness, or whatever we want to call it, is heavily American inflected. And so I think there's a very interesting and important debate going on in France about how to make a multi-ethnic society work that doesn't necessarily follow the American template, because my honest belief is that if you look at what's going on in America right now, you can't necessarily conclude that that's the path to follow.